The Sacred Living podcast is brought to you by Tropiki, a Jamaican-made self-care and wellness brand which includes natural handmade soaps, hair and scalp restoration products, womb care products, and healing herbal blends.
Sacred living is the embodiment of all the values that we seek.
At this point in my life, what is sacred to me is my relationships.
Sacred living is simple living.
Sacred living is just showing up always as your authentic self.
The way I view sacred living is living in harmony with, the sacral energy.
To live a sacred life means to be fully aligned and connected with the divine self.
What is up full, oneness with day and night and everything. That is how I live.
I am Tafara, the host of the Sacred Living podcast, where we discuss everything that involves living a purposeful, connected, and balanced life. For the first season, the focus is self, as proper connection with our outer world is impossible without truly connecting to our inner world. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their souls. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. I love this quote by Carl Jung because I agree with it so much. A lot of our light comes from our darkness, from knowing our darkness. You cannot see light without dark. I'm always telling people this, particularly Christians. Well, not just Christians. I think we're all kind of conditioned to see dark as bad, anything black as bad, anything having to do with the dark is evil. That's our conditioning. But the truth is that the darkness comes before the light. And so you have to know that in order to be Christ-like, as a lot of Christians think that they are doing, without really dealing with the darkness inside of them. They just put on this image of light without doing the dark work first. That doesn't make sense. Not to me. So, just like a gem, a crystal, you have to dig it out of the mud and wash off all of the muck before you get to see its true beauty. That is shadow work. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Sacred Living podcast. We're on the 3rd episode. Yay! And I'm getting more comfortable with it. So bear with me as I get used to this type of content. But this evening, we are exploring the shadow and doing shadow work. I think it's important that we do this type of work. If we say that we're living a sacred life, we should be doing some self-work, right? Because self-work is where our growth is going to come from. And if you're not growing, what are you really doing with life? So what is the shadow? Your shadow is the dark, hidden parts of yourself that you hide from everyone and that you hide from even yourself. It is truths about yourself that you prefer to ignore or to deny. It's the parts of yourself that conflicts with who you want to present as in the world. So your shadow keeps you from being your authentic self. Our shadow is where our most dangerous, dark emotions like shame, guilt, fear, jealousy, all of those negative emotions come from our shadow. But the shadow is not just a place for darkness. Light can come from our shadow. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But this theory of the shadow self was made popular by Carl Jung, the psychologist Carl Jung. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but anyway. So he made it popular. But it should be noted, though, that he spent a lot of time in India. He very much immersed himself into the spiritual practices there. A lot of his work can be credited to the spiritual culture of the Indus Valley people. Nonetheless, his work is still very useful in our exploration of self and, our evolutionary process to being more balanced people. But why do shadow work? What are the benefits of shadow work? Shadow work helps us to truly know and connect to ourselves, to face and embrace everything that makes us who we are, the good and the bad. Shadow work helps us to live in honesty and in truth through self-acceptance. When you accept all that you are, it is hard to live a lie. Shadow work helps you to form and maintain healthy relationships, as it brings awareness of the dark parts of ourselves that may negatively impact the people we connect with regularly. When we know our shadows, our relationships flourish. Shadow work also helps us to deal better with other people's shadows. Other people have deep darkness within them that may come out and affect you. You may feel uncomfortable with something that came from someone, and you can know, because you know your own darkness, you can see it and know, okay, that's coming from their shadow, and you can feel some compassion for them, or maybe, help them through it. The shadow can also reveal good things in yourself that may be repressed due to trauma. In our shadow is potential to grow, to transcend, to transmute, to alchemize. So what are some of the ways that we can do shadow work? Many people use plant medicines like mushroom, ashwagandha, ayahuasca. In Africa, they use a plant called iboga, which I really want to try. As soon as I land on African soil, I'm definitely using some plant medicines. So these plants are revealers. They make you see things hidden and help you face things you already know that you avoid, which is not an easy process, to be honest. You have to face a lot of yourself. And most people don't even like being alone, much less facing themselves on this very, very deep level. So it's hard. It's not easy using some plant medicines. I myself have tried very small doses of mushrooms, not enough to help me deal with any shadow stuff. But I want to eventually get there. I'm just very picky about who I get mushrooms from. But eventually I'll get there. But I have done shadow work with another plant medicine, and that is weed. And I've spoken about this many times, that I did a lot of shadow work during my 20s with weed. And it wasn't by choice. It's just kind of how the plant decided to communicate with me. I just had a lot of moments where I had to look at myself very deeply with weed. I don't know how. That's just, as I said, that's just what the plant did for me. I don't know about anybody else. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people say weed will mad you, or weed will make you feel crazy, or whatever. It's because of that very thing. A lot of people are afraid of dealing with their darkness, and marijuana is one of those plants that will help you to face that. And most people will mad when them face themselves, that's the truth. A second way is to see a therapist. No, we all can't do shadow work by ourselves. Most people need help. Most people just don't have the tools. If they don't have anybody around them that would give them the tools, there's no way of knowing. And so that's what a lot of people don't know about therapy, is that therapists understand a lot of what we experience as humans. They know about a lot of the struggles that people face. And they're trained to study the tools, that many people and psychologists like Carl Jung have studied and done the work, done the research, and know what works and what will help us to heal. So psychologists can tell you what to do. They can give you the exercises, tell you what to watch, tell you what to listen to, and what conversations you need to have with self and with others. The third thing I would suggest is journal. I always find that writing helps me to better express my thoughts and get things out that I would normally keep in. I find it especially useful for sorting through emotional triggers. When I feel things like fear or anger, I go to my journal and I write it out. Or when I have something that's really puzzling me, like something that's, what is this? What is this about? Things that come up often. A big part of shadow work is observing yourself. You have to have self-awareness or develop self-awareness. So you see your behaviors, you see your thought patterns, and you make a note of them. You acknowledge them, make a note of them, observe them, and then you start asking yourself questions. And this is why I think solitude is also important for shadow work. You need time alone. You need time with self. People have to get comfortable with being with yourself. I tell my mother this all the time. When do you really have time to be with yourself? Because when you get time alone, it seems like the first thing you want to do is reach for your phone. If you're not calling someone, you're listening to some church program, or you join some group chat or something like that, but there's no time to be alone with your thoughts and to work through these very deep, dark parts of yourself that I guess that's a part of the running, right? That's part of how you run from yourself. You try to escape in so many other things. And I guess that's why people end up doing drugs, getting addicted to alcohol or cigarettes or, whatever it is. I find that solitude is important for having conversations with yourself. I ask myself questions all the time. Even recently, I've been having this thing come up where I feel a lot of guilt. I have a friend who passed and we're close. And of course, there are people who are close to her, family and, other people connected to her. And I sometimes feel a lot of guilt for not connecting to those people. It's like I feel like there's an obligation that I'm not meeting, like I'm supposed to connect with them, but I don't do it, But when I don't do it, I feel guilt. And I start asking myself questions of why am I feeling that way? If I were to reach out to them, is it going to feel authentic? Is it going to feel like it's coming from an authentic place? Like, what am I going to feel? Why do I feel the need to reach out to them? We never had if we never had a relationship before, or am I supposed to feel that obligation? Is it okay for me to feel like I lost my friend? She was my friend. And yes, you meant something to her, but it doesn't mean that you have to mean something to me, But I also think it comes from my savior complex. I do have a savior complex. I have this thing where I feel like I need to be there for somebody. I need to comfort somebody. I need to teach somebody. I need to, fix things for somebody. And it's coming. It's shown up in my human design. Human design is another. It's coming out of astrology, and so it tells you about different parts of your personality, and I am a, what do you call, a manifest generator. So I'm one of those people that I do good when people ask me for help, but not so much when I offer my help without people asking for it, and so sometimes shame and a lot of like negative emotions will come from me forcing my help onto people. And that has happened to me many, many, many times, right? But I just like to put on capes. I love to put on capes, and so I think that's where it's coming from. So I need to deal with that, so I don't have this feeling of guilt all the time, because it is so uncomfortable to feel guilt. And I'm just like, I'm not a horrible person. I haven't done anything horrible in these situations. There's really no reason for me to feel like this. And there's no reason that I should really feel an obligation to keeping up with the loved ones of a loved one that I've lost, But that whole conversation there is shadow work. You understand? That is shadow work. Peeling back and understanding why this negative emotion is there. And if there is even a potential for something better out of that negative emotion. Another way that you can do shadow work is to talk to people. Talk to the people who love you, or at least you think love you. Because, people will say that they love you, but they aren't honest with you. And I think people who love you tell you the truth, because you can grow from the truth, right? Some of my best relationships I've grown from because they were honest with me and told me the truth. And I'm not talking about the people who think they're telling you the truth because they think it's what you want to hear, but it's not really about your growth. It's really about them. It's really their shadow showing up. It's something that they need to work on in themselves that they're projecting onto you, right? That can actually happen too. People's shadows showing up, a lot of times when they're telling you something, it don't really resonate, or you don't see any room in it for your growth. That's how you know it's not about you. It's really about them. But ask people questions, engage the ones around you in conversations about yourself and tell them to be honest and truthful with you. It may feel very uncomfortable, but prepare yourself for it, and prepare yourself not to be upset or offended, but just know that it is for your own good. The other type of shadow work that you can do is to face your childhood traumas. A lot of people are stuck in the timeline of a particular trauma that happened and haven't been free since. And the thing about shadow work is that it really does give you a whole lot of freedom after you've done it. Especially from these situations in our childhood that has kept us back. A lot of people don't like to deal with childhood traumas. They don't want to go back to those things from in the past. But trust me, in some way, it's affecting you right now, today. But sometimes facing childhood traumas can difficult conversations about said trauma. I myself told my parents, more like confronted my parents about me being molested at 4 years old. That happened twice actually at 4 years old. And I remember everything, But the point for me was to let them know that I didn't feel protected. And so later on in my life, I had no clue what it felt like to be protected. And I behaved like it too. I behaved like a woman who didn't know what protection is or wasn't protected. Well, I wasn't protected, but yeah. And even when I was in relationships, I struggled to allow a man to protect me. And a lot of times it even felt like control. What was protection felt like control to me. And so I had to deal with a lot of those childhood issues that I had in order to have a more balanced relationship. So many of us need to do this type of work, shadow work. I believe it's major for Black people. We really need to do this type of work. We always think that change is going to come through some huge shift in the masses, but our change is going to come through self, through working on self, through self-awareness, through self-study, through self-work, through self-love. It starts with you first. That's what we all need to realize, that we have to be the change that we want to see. What you want to see in other people, you have to make sure that you are it. That's it. One of the best ways that women can do shadow work is through vaginal steaming. Yes, that's what I said, vaginal steaming. Now, it's a time usually when a woman is by herself. It is me time. It's like having a spa day at home. It's time when you are relaxed, time when you can sit and meditate and really have some serious self-talk. You can ask yourself some questions and really explore certain emotions, explore certain parts of you. You can explore some things within yourself that are possibly preventing you from having healthy relationships. The Pum Pum Steam from Tropiki has some really amazing herbs that are very supportive in helping you to relax, soothing your nervous system so that you can deal with some of the very deep emotions that are going to come up when you start to ask yourself certain questions in this type of shadow work. So that concludes this week's episode of the Sacred Living podcast, where we explored the shadow and how to do some shadow work. Don't forget, you can get that Pum Pum Steam and the complimentary Pum Pum Oil from tropikinaturals.com, our sponsor. Please don't forget to rate the podcast, comment, share, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And yeah, we'll link up next week, Tuesday, same time, 7 p.m., wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, take care of yourself and we'll link up soon.